Welcome to Flux, the energy show that's all about helping you to become a smarter energy consumer. We are on an energy mission and we are excited to have you along for the ride. Now let's begin. You turn over in the morning, the first thing you grab is your phone. Is it charged? Is it dead? You wake up in the middle of the night. Are you sweating? Are you comfortable? Now you're watching a movie with a family. Can you finish the movie without losing power? Whether or not we have access to reliable power makes a big difference in our lives. There's just so much that reliable power can do for us. From comfort to peace of mind. From entertainment opportunities to business opportunities. Power is a game changer.
Hey everyone, it's Rotimi Thomas, co-founder at Aspire Power Solutions, back at it again. And on this episode of Flux, I'll be answering the question, how many solar panels do I need to fully charge a 200 amp hour battery? Let's dive right in. This topic is actually kind of interesting. It's interesting because it's one of the most popular questions we found on Google when researching what topics might be interesting for our audience. Turns out, this is one of those questions you all desperately need an answer to. So let's dig into it. Let's start by revisiting some basics. We're going to talk today about charging your 200 amp hour battery using solar versus any other source. We typically find that 200 amp hour batteries actually are quoted as 12 volt 200 amp hour batteries. What does this mean? It means that the 200 amp hour battery we speak of actually has the capacity to store up to 2.4 kilowatt hours or 2,400 watt hours. For context, your TV uses about 70 to 100 watts. A watt hour, as we discussed in our earliest episode, is 1 watt used for 1 hour. Voila, you have 1 watt hour. So if you use 200 watts used for 12 hours, you would have used 2,400 watt hours. You can see how there are thousands of permutations and combinations of watts you can use for different amounts of time that would use up 2,400 watt hours or 2.4 kilowatt hours. So now that we have this down, let's talk about how we would actually charge this 2,400 watt hour battery. There are different solar panel sizes. For example, you may find 200 watt panels, 250 watt panels, and even 300 watt panels. This list is actually not exhaustive. We found that the average power production you should expect out of these panels, depending on the brand you use, is about 35 to 40% on average of the rated capacity of the system. So if you have a 300 watt solar panel, you'll typically on average produce about 120 watts or so from that panel on a normal sunny day. That's over the course of the hours that the sunlight's actually available. It can get as high as 65% of the rated solar panel capacity, but our observation here in Lagos at least suggests an average production of about 40% of the rated capacity. Now, if you just connect one solar panel of say 300 watts to a 2,400 watt hour battery, producing at about 120 watts on average, it will likely take about 20 hours to charge that battery. Wow, that's a long time. Well, of course it is. That's why you would never charge a 2.4 kilowatt hour battery with only one solar panel. You would likely get up to 4 solar panels to charge your batteries faster. So if you had 4 300 watt solar panels charging your 2,400 watt hour battery, you'd have a rated solar panel system of about 1,200 watts. If it's producing, on average, about 40% of its rated capacity or 400 watts, you charge the batteries in 5 hours, which is 2,400 watt hours divided by 480 watts, resulting in a 5-hour charge time. It's a very rough calculation. It's much faster, right? Now, we haven't discussed the type of battery being charged yet. It matters. If you're using a lead battery, you really shouldn't use more than 50% of the battery storage capacity. So if you have 2,400 watt-hour lead batteries, you should only use 1,200 watt-hours of the battery capacity, about 50%. This will enable the lead battery to last a longer time. If it's a lithium battery, you can typically use up to about 80% or 1,920 watt hours of the battery capacity. If you're using the same 1,200 watt set of solar panels and you only need to charge 1,200 watt hours worth of energy storage capacity, it would get charged in only 2.5 hours. That's 1,200 watt hours divided by 480 watts, 40% on average of the 1,200 watt capacity rating of the system. Remember, we discussed that. If you're charging a lithium battery, it charges even faster than the lead battery. This is also affected by the type of inverter or charging system you use. Also, you should know that when you use the batteries with an inverter which is always required to store the energy in the battery and withdraw it later for usage in the building, the inverters have certain voltage limitations. So, if you have a 48 volt inverter and you have a 12 volt battery, you would need at least 4 12-volt batteries to actually make a battery bank that matches the 48-volt level of the inverter. These have to match. If your inverter is 24 volts, then using a 12-volt battery, you would need 2 of them, making 24 volts. 12 times 2. If it's 12 volts of the inverter that you're using, or on the inverter that you're using, you'd only need 1 12-volt battery. I hope this example actually really makes a lot of sense to you. Make sure you also understand this and you understand how this interaction plays out when engaging your service provider. We always talk about this at Aspire Power Solutions with our consumers. Lastly, installing excess solar sometimes may not be useful, as the inverter is still a limiting factor guiding how much energy can enter the battery. So I guess it depends on how much excess solar you install. If you have a 5 kilowatt inverter, for example, but you install a 20 kilowatt solar system, it's of no use, as the inverter will typically only push through a max of about 5 kilowatts of power or 5,000 watts into the battery at a particular time. So, the big answer to your very popular question, which was, how many solar panels does it require to charge a 200 amp hour battery, is, it depends. It can take either 20 hours or 1 hour or 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and so on. It all depends on how many solar panels you use, their efficiency and their depth of discharge for the batteries that you're charging and the percentage of the battery capacity being charged, plus the rating of your inverter. There's so many factors that work together. One of the biggest factors is the number of solar panels that you use at the same time to actually fill up that battery. Think of your battery as a big bucket of water. You're pouring water into it. If you pour the water into it at a very slow rate, it'll take you a very long time to fill up that bucket of water. But if you pour the water in at a much faster rate using bigger source of the water that's coming into the bucket, then it'll fill up at a much faster time. So that's how you should kind of think about the answer to your question. Okay, it's also important to note you don't need solar panels to charge your batteries. You can also charge them using grid electricity or even using your generator. But we do recommend and tell you that the cleanest and cheapest source for charging your battery is the solar panel methodology, followed by the grid and then your generator. Okay, as always, my name is Rotimi Thomas, and thank you for listening to this episode of Flux. I do look forward to improving your energy experience on our next episode. Catch you next time. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Flux. We're excited to be with you on your journey to reliable power in Nigeria. Now, whether it's at home or at work, ensuring that you have power is our full-time job. We're here to help make that job a little easier for you. Do not forget, you can hit us up across any of our socials, that is on Instagram or Twitter, at APS_Africa or at Africa Business Radio.